because you mentioned welfare, right?
No, I was going to say, with India and countries like that, they can't afford feminism.
They can't afford it.
The woman would die if her husband wasn't there. But you know that, guess which country's got the biggest men's rights movement in the world?
Men's rights movement in the
It'll
world.
surprise you. India. Yeah, you got it. India.
Really?
Because they changed the dowry laws to protect women, and now women have got the whip hand. And a lot of women, because they can say that the man promised to marry her and didn't. And not only does she put him in prison, but she can put the whole bloody family in prison. Because in the dowry laws, often it was the in-laws that
Said it.
that enforced it. And in the worst things, they had bride burning, where to get force the wife's parents to pay more, they would threaten they would kill her.
Wow.
And that was in the worst situations. And so, obviously, India didn't want that happening, so they stopped it. But now women are doing the worst things possible to the man and his family. They've got, and a lot of these women are absolutely awful doing that. And so the thing is, India, the culture in India, the Hindus, the Sikhs, the Muslims, very different to Western culture. They seem to be able to work. It was a Neil Kumar I've met. He's from something about the Family Association, I think it's called. Indian men will go together and they will have a meeting in a sports stadium or where all the seats are at a sports match. They will go anywhere and have a meeting, and they will set up network. Our culture's not so good at that. And they've been helping men all over the country. And because everyone thinks that
And in a way,
India is a patriarch. It's not. In many respects, it's a matriarch. Women have an enormous amount of power in India.
so like a lot of the stuff that so I mean, you spoke about how it's more organized there, but it's not just about organization, it's about freedom of speech. So what you were saying here, I thought was very reasonable, but there was hostility here, there's hostility that was growing, and if there were a lot more women, there would be a lot more. But freedom of speech at Speaker's Corner is far more than what you'd get at university and other places.
I couldn't say this anywhere else.
Yeah.
I couldn't say it on a street corner. The thing is...
You probably could say it in India, though.
Yeah, probably. Well, Mike Buchanan, the one who owns the men's Justice for Men and Boys and Women Who Love Them, he's been to a conference in India. And then Anil Kumar and other people like him come to a lot of our international conferences. And since things have been changing around us, and people used to be really rude or horrible to us, but not anymore. Our speakings have got better, my speaking and other people, my colleagues, wherever they've gone, I don't know where they are. But,
No, but you did a good job here.
I've learned.
I commend you for that. 'Cause you were very patient, and there was one point in which she was like, you can't talk on my issues.
Yeah.
But she was talking on your issues.
Yeah.
And it was...
You see, I didn't hate her, and I actually respect her. I don't respect her opinions, but I'm a man, she's a woman, I'm talking to her. I don't want to pinch her bum or anything like that. I don't want to be rude to her. She actually looks like quite a professional person, so I feel a little bit of respect to her, but I think her ideas are wrong on this, so I was debating her. Whether or not she had any respect for me is another thing.
Well, I doubt
That's
that.
quite funny, that's quite funny.
Well, actually, when you brought up something which she should have responded to, you said, if you start off by telling women they're victim, you're, I think, giving them a disabled. Right. So I think that's important, because when I'm sometimes talking to women who have these feministic ideas, it's a defense mechanism that they have, that every man out there is trash, is evil, is trying to destroy their lives. So that victimhood mindset, it creates this sort of collective social brain of the women to not allow the men even the chance to explain why patriarchy, gender roles, and toxic what they call toxic masculinity, what we would call traditional masculinity, why there were some benefits to this, right?
Well, you look at a party girl who goes to a lot of parties. She will have sex with the strong, wild-looking man, often the bad man. Now, the well-behaved, responsible man is boring. And this is hypergamy, this is the term. She's going for the higher status, what she thinks is the higher status male. A lot of women will horribly use the nice man. She may have... there's a lot of...
By the way, do you agree with that? Because, I mean, you're making a descriptive claim, But would you prescribe that? Would you say that that's what should happen in society?
No,
that women go for higher.
I think when you've got a culture that has rules in it to try and protect people, obviously it's not always going to work. You don't have your daughter going out to parties like that. She'll meet people with a chaperone and the family will be involved, and she'll know more about it and decide that she wants a sensible husband. But she still might, like a man will fantasize about having some wild leggy woman, this woman will fantasize about having some big
Dangerous.
muscular wild man. Now that's in your head, but when you do it, a lot of women who divorce their husbands will go with one of these wild men, and a lot of them, they aren't responsible. Or even if the man decides that, I've met men who said they met a single mother, and he was saying, oh, you got children, he's interested in saying, she didn't want to know him then. She only wants it for her sex and her fantasy, but as soon as he starts getting involved, oh, the children, she doesn't want it. And of course, even saying that, anyone assumes a man that's interested in children, it's for sex or some perverted reason.
Yeah.
They don't realise, and children need both. Men can do things with children, with the excitement and throwing them and this and that. Women don't tend to do that. They excite. Jordan Peterson says this. Men will chuck the child up and catch it and just take them to the edge of danger, and the child will love it and they'll get their confidence up. The women don't tend to do that. The child needs both, and the child also needs the mother's holding, and if she's that kind of woman. But a lot of women don't know how to be women now, and because the feminists have told women that being a woman
You need to be more masculine and
is weak. You got to ape men. You know, ape means is an old term for like copying. You got to copy men, but why don't they copy nice men?
why don't they just copy nice women?
Yeah,
Rather
because
than
they think that's a loser's thing. How many men at the top of everything? How many men have power over everybody, over everything? Men, and when you get older, if you're reasonable, you can have influence. Very few men, if they're a tyrant, they better be good at being it, because someone's going to knock them over. Another man will come along, or a group of men will come along and take them down, which will be good.
I mean, in the state of nature, and I think this is something that's powerful, without intervention, you will always have the men, because of their competitive nature, dominating every single institution.
Yeah.
So because of that, shouldn't there be a realization from the feminists that maybe there's a biological difference, it's not a cultural difference?
The word you used there wrongly was realization. They don't live in the real world. You know?
I like that. I like
But
that.
you've got to remember, most radical feminists, or the academic ones, they aren't normal women. A lot of them either resent their father, even they can resent men for not standing up to their mother. Gloria Steinem, who's the Australian feminist? The awful Australian one, the one who's now gets...
Jermaine Greer.
Jermaine Greer.
Yeah.
Her mother treated her father like a dog. He was in the war. She stuck him in she took all his money off him and stuck him in and even Jermaine Greer writes this, she never knew her father. Yet she's a feminist who spits on men. And in this story, this is the hypocrisy of it. She's crying because she didn't know her father. As far as I've never read, I wouldn't bother reading the book. I should. But her mother destroyed her father. I don't think she even liked her mother. A lot of feminists they have problems with their mother, and their father wasn't there to rescue them, so they end up hating men. A lot of feminists are also, most people don't realise, they're quite perverted. And if you go into a gay bar, you won't see children. You go into a lesbian bar, you'll see girls. Most people don't know that.
Do you mean the radical feminists, right?
I'm saying a lot of radical feminists tend to be the worst kind of lesbian people. Not all lesbians are like that, some lesbians like men. But you'll find if you go into a same-sex environment, if it's men, like men who are gay, you won't see children. But you go into a lesbian bar, there will be girls there. And a lot of them will say, well, it's my niece, when in fact it's not their niece. And there's a famous book called The Vagina Monologues. The hero in that was a 13-year-old girl. So there is stuff in this, because now with a lot of the stuff that they're pushing with gender and all the rest of it, there's paedophiles coming out of the woodwork who are wanting to make that legal as well. And sex is good, man-boy love And it was, it's the stuff's being pushed by these kind of people because they don't have a balance or a morality. Children aren't for that. They get for that when they've reached adolescence and they can make a relationship then. There's a lot of stuff with these people which is really, really not good. And they don't know. And they think that a father in a family with authority, moral, that shares authority with the mother is really dirty or bad. I met a woman once, she had the most amazing curly hair. And she said when she was a girl, she came downstairs and her father said, "You're not going out like that, get upstairs." So she ran upstairs, stomp, and slammed the door. And she says, "I'm glad my father did," because she went down there wearing something. She was a girl about to go out dressed very provocatively. And the father said, "You're not going out like that."
See, today that would be considered
Abuse.
Abuse, and not only this. For example, in Islam, we have this concept of protective jealousy.
Yeah.
So we believe that if a woman in a man's family, she walks out the house in a way that's promiscuous, in a way that she's revealing her clothes. Now, if he has the power and the influence over her, and he doesn't stop that, then he is sinful for that. That is evil.
Shame, yeah.
It's an evil thing.
Because she's hurting herself.
Well, what happens in society actually is, I just want to relate something to you because I think this is something which is the crux of the matter. It is the man's authority to have the say in terms of how a woman should, in her family, should dress or do these types of things. And today's society, that's blasphemy. It's blasphemy, this idea.
It's even hard for me to hear.
Yeah, but that's because you may have been brought up in an egalitarian society.
I've been brought up in a very female society.
Like, for example, I'm a father.
Yeah.
I would not want my daughters to walk out in a certain way.
See, the other thing is that women are beautiful and there can be a real beauty and dignity. And without, I mean, a lot of the shops sell for little girls cut-off tops and earrings and mini skirts. These are children. They shouldn't be dressing like that. A lot of
people will freak out what you just said there.
But see, a lot of girls think that they're being pretty. Like when little girls will sit there and they'll get hold of mum's makeup when she's not there or lipstick and they'll be putting her on in the mirror and they'll be covered in it. And they'll come down with her shoes on, made a mess of the bedroom and probably get a smack. But they think they're being pretty in it, so they want to be like mummy. But when you dress, a child doesn't, they have an inkling, but they don't really understand. And as men, we know there are predators out there. And it's your responsibility, and even if your wife doesn't understand it, shame on her. A lot of women do. Old-fashioned women do. But it's very hard when you're young and you're experimenting. The reason teenagers challenge their parents, and they need to, is because they know they're in a safe environment and they can argue in that. If they don't do that, they'll go into life without ever learning how to stick up for themselves. Yeah. And often it's very hard on the mum and dad. And that's where the father used to have the final words. I know, I watched...
I agree with that.
The woman upstairs is screaming all the time. I think she's a Muslim woman. I don't think they're devout. The father doesn't have much to say, and the boys are screaming and crying, and then they're arguing with her, and then she's trying to appease them. She's there trying to appease them, and they're screaming at her. It must be a living nightmare. I know it's a living nightmare to live under it. And she's got no control. And they may say, well, the children have Asperger's or something, or they have autism, but no, often it's because they, there's an old term that...
It's empowerment without responsibility. They're empowered to do these things, but they don't
want to be their friends, and you can't do that with your children. I mean, you're a father, I'm not. You must know that you can't be your children's best friend because you're actually an
authority figure.
You're an authority, but you're also responsible for them.
Yeah.
A lot of kids like now, these young girls here, telling us about...
Like those ones?
Yeah. The children.
The kids, yeah.
And I've said this to them before, and I had 3 girls a couple of weeks ago, and I said, look, your teachers aren't doing you any favours. They're making you angry at men. You're all children, and you may never be able to have a relationship with a man. And women will manipulate men, and sometimes they need to, because often the husband might be wrong. And the last thing often a good husband wants is a row with his wife. But sometimes people need to argue to get to the bottom of it. I call it militant dependence. People who are dependent, but they're militant and they want to control things. And when you give them the power, or they take the power, they remain dependents. They will never step up and take the responsibility and of it. So you're being ruled by people who can't be held accountable for what they do or say. Anyone who rules you needs to be accountable for the decisions they make, and they need to know that so they can try and make the right decisions. Yeah. And so it's all very upside down at the moment. But we may be on the verge of actually getting rid of a lot of the people in Parliament who are complete rubbish, who are making money hand over fist, and they're only interested in that.
But do you think it's not just a structural issue? It's a culture, and like you said, you're fighting the mainstream, but the culture is so strong that you have behavior which is socialized, not rationalized. So for example, the young ladies who stuck up for the woman that you're talking to without really understanding what you were talking about.
Anything, no.
Yeah,
but
they attacked in synergy. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Now, obviously you deflected them, you sound like you're seasoned, but what I felt about that was that you can't change somebody in power and get rid of that structure, this culture. This culture eats structures for breakfast. It's so strong.
Yeah. But remember, it's built on sand. It's built on sand. And the left eat themselves. Because they start fighting with each other over resources, because nobody's producing anything anymore, because they hold all the positions. But focused on this angle for quite some time now. But we're living in interesting times.
Yeah.
And we've been so comfortable for so long, and our culture always works together. We've got a lot of holes that made this happen, but and women, a person can only use blackmail for so long, and that's what it all is, it's blackmail. And the blackmail's running out, and they're becoming more and more ridiculous, and plus they're getting older. And the younger women I don't want to be told what to do or what they need from an older woman.
And there's this thing that you mentioned earlier about the way the institutions run in this country. If there is a dispute between a man and a woman, and the woman makes, say, a false accusation, everybody in that chain of command will take her side. You know, believe every woman.
They're all terrified. Because they've all been brainwashed themselves and they're all cowards. Yet there's a few people popping out now who are saying, this is just crazy. And the thing is...
I'm seeing this growing across the world.
Yeah.
I'm seeing this growing.
The people who will actually be at the forefront of the social change, I think, will be women, not men. It always has been.
Because they're going to get sick and tired of...
But also they've got the social power men don't have.
It's not women, it's men that have had the chop. They're no longer men. Well, eunuch type things, but they chop it off.
Oh, well, you're
and the forefront of the
about
revolution, the social revolution I thought he was talking about.
But what do you mean men don't have social power?
Women have enormous social power. When a woman speaks about issues that affect her...
No, but that's in the society today, which is indoctrinated with egalitarian values and believe every woman. But traditionally, it's the man who has the more societal pressure as a
when it came to the structure of society, but when a woman was to talk about what affects her and what affects the family, talks to her husband and
on that level,
then pushes through. And it got to the point where the woman would actually stand up and speak about it herself, and everyone would listen. In the past, the woman would use her husband as a tool to do it, but then it got to the point where she didn't need that, and it's kept going. So I think the people who are going to bring the social change on are going to be men, but also women, the unusual women who will join them and talk logic. And a lot of women aren't going to get their needs met. That's what's going to change things.
The last question I want to ask you before I go is, so Speaker's Corner has been going well over 100 years. 100 years from now, what do you think is going to be the state of this conversation?
Well, I was a bit worried because we had, last time I was here, there was a little bit of radical Muslim guys were kind of being aggressive. And I like talking to people who can communicate. And I was thinking, God, because a couple of years ago it was quite bad here. That was my worry. And there's the cultural clash between Islam and what was Christianity here. So there's that as well. And that frightens a lot of people. And there are people deliberately creating division between whether it's Jew, Muslim, and Christian. But, and we're on a track now where we're learning our own stuff now about what was our culture. We lost our culture. Our families have been dysfunctional for a long time. In my family, back to my grandmother's generation, my grandmother left her children, my mother left her children, and I think my grandmother either died or left her children, but the women in my family have been the ones that made all the decisions which had the worst effects upon the family. And that was after the war. The suffragettes would have had a lot to do with it, but and my family never went to a church or were part of a community. And my father didn't have a father. My mother didn't have a father of authority either. So what happened was the television, films and music were basically the role models, and that's not a good role model. It's all about getting high, doing what you want and staying young. And unfortunately you don't stay young.
And you reckon 100 years from now, society will go back, like say in the UK, will we go back to traditional values?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
That's what happens, it swings one way and the other.
And if we don't, what does that mean?
Well, if we don't, there'll be war.
Or there'll be no children.
Well,
because you can't have children being born in a society run by feminists.
No, but there'll be single mothers, because women still want children even if they are feminists, and they may not be the traditional mother or spend as much time with the children as the children need. Some people want it all, and they can't do it, and they end up wearing themselves to a thin, down to nothing.
It's really great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
That's not good.